Episode 21. Kate and I discuss Game of Thrones Season 7, Episode 5, East Watch. Dun, 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 dun. Well, so much happened in that episode, I don't even know where to start. There's a lot to talk about.
Yeah, it was really good. And what's interesting is it's what we used to call like a filler. Not like filler, but like where it sets the stage.
Well, nobody died. Well, somebody did die, but no major characters died. There was no big battles. But I think more happened to change the story in this episode than in any for a long time.
Yeah. There was a lot that happened. And I remember I kept thinking, like, I don't want this episode to end. Like, I kept wanting to look at the clock to see how much time do I have left.
Yeah, and it was longer than last week's. Last week's was only 50 minutes. This one was like over an hour. But, all right, I'll take us in roughly chronological order, but not completely chronological order. Okay, so 2 of my predictions came true tonight. One small one, one big one. The small one was that Jaime and Bronn would not be captured. They would magically be on the other side of the river.
The very, very deep trench river.
Yes, so that's what happened because it's good, even when the writers are on their best, they write things for a lot of convenience, but let's not get into that. Right off the bat, Tyrion is ashamed. Dany's given her speech about, bend the knee or die. Tyrion walks up. He cannot look at his Lannister troops. And then, of course, he tries to talk her out of what she does. And what she does makes me sad because we just got to meet those characters and Dickon proved himself last week. But she gave him the torch. They went out like champs. And what do you think about that?
Well, I do feel like there's a bit of hypocrisy for a lot of people out there. You just said that they went out like champs. But let's say Eddard wasn't beheaded. He sacrificed his ideals to try and save his daughters and himself. And I think people would have been okay with that. There's a double standard for characters that you're more inclined to like or not like. And I think people are being more hard on Dany than they would have been hard on other people who are ruling or who have ruled throughout the series. And I don't know if this is it or not, but sometimes I just can't help but wonder if it's because she's a female, and sometimes it's hard to see a female be ruthless for some people. And I don't personally have a problem with it. I see her doing what plenty of other people have done before and her not even being that bad, but yet there's so much backlash. I'm not saying that I don't disagree with what Tyrion's trying to counsel her on, especially since her father roasted people alive, so I don't want people to misinterpret that I'm all for that, but I just feel like there just seems to be inconsistency with a lot of audience opinions on both Dany as a ruler and how she should rule, and also of how people are. I honestly thought Dickon's move was pretty stupid. He knew exactly that he was going to die. I get why his father, Randall Tarley, did what he did, but Dickens was just like, all right, I just want to go out in a blaze of glory and support my dad, which, okay, but now you've just ended your house, your whole house line right there. Even though, they're females, and I think that should count too, but in this world, it's the guys who pass on the line.
Yeah, by go out like champs, I just meant they were brave and they stayed together. And I wasn't trying to make...
But they didn't have to.
It was obviously there to give us... It wasn't about them, it was about Dany. That was what they were trying to show us.
Well, no, I think they weren't inconsequential. They didn't just choose 2 random Lannister supporters. They chose not a great house, but a close to great house, especially after the Tyrell house just got wiped out. Like, the Tarleys are huge, and they've been around for a long time. So wiping out a house because they refuse to submit, it's a huge statement. So it's not just her choosing to roast people alive because they won't bend the knee. There's a larger statement being said with the fact that it was who it was.
For me, what I noticed is the contrast is that in the very last episode, we were talking about how Dany gives people the choice to support her or not. At least with the slaves, the slaver bay, that is not the ideology she's bringing to Westeros, apparently. Whether you can freely walk away like Missandei said you could or not doesn't seem to be an option.
But was it ever going to be an option? Let's go back to season 1 when she said, I want to go claim my throne and do all this. Did you honestly think she was going to give people an option then? I don't think it's a surprise.
Apparently Missandei thinks she has the option. Grey Worm thinks he has the option. I thought that's what the show was trying to communicate. That last episode, they said that they follow her freely. This episode, they had no choice to follow her freely.
You don't give choices when you conquer. I personally don't like it, but I grew up in this day and age, so it's hard to put myself into that place. But, like, she's not doing anything different than what everyone else hasn't done or tried to do.
Well, I agree with you that she's par for the course, essentially, doing what everyone else does. And
I mean, that's what John warned her of, too.
Right,
You'll just be more of the same.
Yeah,
and that's how I see her. I see her as more of the same. I don't see her as this great, amazing queen, but I also don't see her as this horrible person either.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think we're meant to wonder, and the people that think she's going to be bad are left thinking their thing, and the people that think she's going to be good are left thinking their thing. When I posted our episode last week on Facebook, there was a long debate about whether Dany is good, going to be good, or just going to be a disaster, and it was a pretty heated debate. A lot of us fall on the one side that Dany has too much power, has too much Targaryen blood in her that might lead her down a Mad Queen type path, even if not full blown. And other people think like, hey, she's the best this world has to offer, even if she's not perfect. She, is a lot more merciful than many of the other would-be kings or queens.
Well, is it about what she could become or about what she is right now?
Well, I think that they've been showing her progress to a more scary person, and I think
showing over the course of 7 seasons.
Over the course of 7 seasons, yeah.
Okay.
And I think the writers have done a good job of making us think about it and wonder.
I mean, because I feel like she's doing what she's been doing for a long time here. She had no problem burning Miramez Dur alive. She burned all the people last season. She hung up all those masters.
Yeah, she crucified the masters.
I mean, she's been doing this stuff all along, so if people are having a change of heart now or only seen it now, I think that has more to do with, in their own minds, they've kind of deified Dany, or they love her so much, and so a fall from grace is because of how they've come to view her and the pedestal they put her on. Like, I've never been a hardcore Dany fan, so I'm okay with her characterization.
Right. It was always kind of beyond me how people weren't worried about her much, much sooner. You know, one of the worst things she did was in season 5, she was questioning the masters, trying to figure out who the Harpy was or something, and just picked one at random and fed him to the dragons. I don't know anything about this guy. Maybe he was a bad guy. Maybe he wasn't. Maybe he was just a dad who just
he was a master.
Unluckily picked. Right. But are all the masters, I think that she's always been a little scary, and people are thinking about it now, but I think the show has done a good job of subtly snowballing it over the seasons.
Well, I think that's kind of the thing for me is I don't think it's been that subtle. Again, I've never been a hardcore Dany fan, but I haven't been a Dany hater either. She's just been there, and I've enjoyed her character, and I like that she's not just all good.
Yeah, I mean, the contrast with Jon is pretty strong, where Jon...
But he doesn't want power. He's like Maximus in Gladiator. He doesn't want it.
Yeah.
And that's what makes him so well suited for it. Unlike his sister, unlike Dany, unlike Cersei.
Well, and you mentioned that you think that people hold Dany to a higher standard than some of the other people.
Yeah. Where was the outrage for every other ruler and conqueror out there? The people that hate on Dany, do you hate everyone else?
Well, most would hate Cersei. That's who she's obviously compared to most, and Cersei's obviously wins the...
But I mean, take an even bigger step backwards. How is Dany that different?
Well, I would say she's objectively worse than, say, Jon or Robb or Ned, as far as brutalness. Maybe worse than Robert. Maybe equal with Stannis, which is going to be a controversial statement, but...
But I mean, I think that's... I don't know, and this is another thing, like, the northern houses, they are pretty ruthless. Like, you go to Night's Watch, and if you abandon, you die immediately. It doesn't matter what reason. So that one guy left because he saw the whites. Doesn't matter, he got beheaded. That's the first episode by Ned. And Robb, he beheaded Karstark because he killed 2 little boys. There's a ruthlessness that's everywhere, but where's the outcry then of like, you just beheaded a whole big guy of a house?
Well, it's a little different. So if you take Dany executing the Tarleys and burning them alive to the dragons,
which is bad, I fully agree with that.
It's bad. It's basically what Stannis did to Mance Rayder, almost exactly. And when Robert won
Stannis did it for power, like the King's Blood stuff.
No, not with Mance. He said there can only be one king in Westeros, and you bend the knee, because Mance called himself the king beyond the wall.
But he burned him alive for the fire god. He could have beheaded him. So he had to die, but how he died was pretty bad. Like, burning people alive, that's not good. That's part of what made the Mad King the Mad King.
But Dany's thing is burning people too. So I'm just saying that they're on a par, I think.
But you like Stannis.
Morally and ethically. Right. I do like Stannis because I liked his character better. You'll notice that I like...
You're so cute.
Well, for one thing, we've talked about this a million times. I think Stannis was the rightful king. I think he was genuinely trying to do the right thing and genuinely trying to do it for the right reason. He was just wrong.
Why do you think Dany's doing it?
Dany thinks she's entitled to be queen.
I don't think just that. I think Dany thinks she's doing it for the right reason. I think that she thinks Westeros is completely corrupt and she wants... she talks about her throne was usurped and, her whole family legacy of people being sent to kill her, how she and her brother had to flee and, how they were treated and what was happening when the takeover happened. It was ruthless. It was awful. I think she thinks that she will do to Westeros what she's done to Slaver's Bay. Isn't that the right thing?
No, because if she happened to get to Westeros when Cersei was queen, but if she got there and Jon Snow was king of the Seven Kingdoms and there was peace and everybody loved Jon and nobody was fighting, she would still be coming for the throne. She would still be coming with dragons, with blood and fire.
I think she would still come, but how that would play out, we don't know. Because she let Jon go without bending the knee. She does show, she married,
Hizdahr Zolorek.
Hizdahr Zolorek, yeah. She married him and hated him for the sake of peace and unity. She's willing to make compromises certain things. She could have come and been like, hey, Jon's actually a pretty decent guy and I think he's hot. And all my advisors are telling me, go about this way. He can break off his wedding, whoever he's with, and we'll marry and we will rule together. There's so
right, but she wouldn't
ways.
have left. She wouldn't have been like, well, everybody's happy. I'm out.
Well, what if they could be more happy? I say that as a joke, but yeah, she would probably come. I do think that she would because of the history I just outlined, though. That there's retribution. There's something that she needs to accomplish by coming there.
There's entitlement.
Yeah, but then you're using that word liberally, I think. We could apply it to a bunch of other people. Because Stannis didn't start his crusade when he did it to save the kingdom. He only figured it out along the way, which means there was a whole chunk of time in which he was completely entitled to. And it's not like you started liking Stannis right when he's like, hey, I should do it for the right reason. You liked him all along.
If you look at Stannis from the point of view that from the minute Robert died, Stannis was the king. He was doing everything that a king should try to do. So he thought...
Because he was entitled.
No, because the law said he was the king. He didn't even want to be.
Does that include killing his brother?
Yeah. His brother betrayed him. It was an open rebellion. By the way, the whole reason that the Seven Kingdoms is not ready for this war with the White Walkers is Renly Baratheon.
Okay, if you didn't hear that was a bomb that just got dropped, so you're going to have to explain
we can do a whole episode on this if we want, or I can just quickly go over it. But if Renly had done his duty and Stannis offered to name him his heir, then Stannis would have taken King's Landing, so Tyrion would be dead, unfortunately. But Stannis would be in King's Landing with the power of his army, Renly's, Storm's End, Highgarden, because Loras and Renly were lovers. And Tywin would be caught between Stannis on the south and Robb in the north. Now, when Tywin's in the field, anything can happen. Tywin could have maybe still won. But he probably would have got in big trouble between the two of them. And maybe Stannis and Robb could have come to some conclusion, or maybe not. But by the time they were figuring it out, the known threat in the north would have come to Stannis' attention. And he would have focused with the full power of the Seven Kingdoms to go and protect the north, which he tried to do with a very small power. And it all didn't work out because Renly, who had no claim to the throne, wanted to be king. That's what I think.
There's so many bombs dropping right now. I just don't know what to say.
Maybe we'll explore it more some other time.
There's a lot of hypotheticals going on of if Jon were king and what Dany would do if Renly did this. Yeah, but also all the other parallel universes that exist too.
Right. Yeah. Would have been, could have been, should have been. Not the way it was.
You could play that game endlessly.
Right. But some scenarios are more likely than others.
So someone who likes to be right.
Anyways, moving on. she goes back to Dragonstone, and we get John has a big connection with the dragon. Dun dun dun.
Well, and they're not so subtle about the connection he's having with Danny either. But I was actually surprised because, again, I thought that you're supposed to, like, the dragons they're like the winged creatures from Avatar. They kind of just sync with one person. So I was kind of expecting John to really get along with...
They sync with one family, I think. That's how it appears to me. But, okay, so who's been able to touch dragons this series? Danny, John, and Tyrion. Does Tyrion mean anything? We'll just let you guys wonder. Sam had a pretty important scene. He had a couple important scenes. He leaves the old town. He leaves the Maesters because there are a bunch of...
And I don't think he knows about his family.
There's a bunch... No, he doesn't. They even said that. But the Maesters... To me, I think they've been a little bit showing that the Maesters like to hoard their knowledge, like to hoard their...
What's that saying about
good?
Absolute power?
Right.
It corrupts absolutely.
They have the power, and they are naturally conservative. I don't mean politically, but they're slow moving, and they just like to be the smart people on the block.
And I don't think they like to be wrong. And what's interesting is, I know medicine is just one branch of the many things that they do, but it reminds me of like our real world medicine history, in which there was one point when doctors didn't believe that germs existed, and they couldn't believe that, someone of their caliber could actually be what's causing people to get sick. And a lot of people died, and specifically a lot of women who gave birth died because of that complete arrogance. And
right.
it reminds me of that same type of thing of like, we know everything. And
how many centuries has the Maesters held back Westeros by hoarding the knowledge and by not acting on it? Like, already this season they've had a cure for grayscale, apparently, that they were too conservative to use, and they get news like this and they don't want to spread it or whatever.
Well, and how are they successful at holding that knowledge? Because Sam can't possibly be the first person to feel the way that he does. At least in the books, there's a little bit of a hinting that there is some sort of deeper, hidden, dark side to the Citadel.
Well, Qyburn got the boot from the Citadel. They didn't like what he was doing either. He was taking it to the next level or whatever. And I said, get out of here, pal. We'll get to Qyburn later, though, because he had an interesting scene. But the important thing, and the reason I jumped to Sam right from John and the Dragons, is... Rhaegar annulled his marriage and had a secret wedding. Mm-hmm. So...
I know that Sam was really irritated and annoyed, but it is not his character at all to not pick up on that. I was literally waiting for him to be like, wait, what did you just say? So when that never came, I was a little annoyed.
Yeah, well, Sam wasn't paying attention to the fact that the heir of the throne annulled his marriage to Dorne because they just don't want Dorne in the story anymore. So the implications of that are big. That means that Jon is a legitimate Targaryen, and he has a better claim to the throne than Dany.
But he had a more legitimate claim before we learned that piece of knowledge. The line of succession.
Well, he was a bastard, so it was illegitimate. If that's like saying Gendry right now would be tops, and maybe he would be. There'd probably be a fight over it. But now he was legitimate. Like, there would be no question about whether, if anyone cares at this point, whether he would be the next in line Targaryen, I think.
Yeah.
And that's interesting. If that happens in the books, it hasn't happened yet. That's big, and I think a lot of people might have missed that.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of implications for that, for sure.
Speaking of Gendry, we had 2 reunions. Gendry and Davos and Jorah came back. Gendry was my other big prediction for the season, which I think we all knew was going to happen.
I love Davos was like, yeah, I thought maybe you were still rowing your boat. And
yeah.
I thought that line was in there just for all the fans who are like, is he still rowing?
For sure, yeah, that's the joke. Like, well, he's been rowing for 3 seasons now.
I like that he prepared. I like that they gave screen time to what he actually did do during this time, that he kept his head down. He knew that something was going to be coming, and he was ready. And when he pulled out the Warhammer, I was like, that's awesome.
Yeah, that's, of course, his father, Robert, was famously a Warhammer guy.
It's how he beat Rhaegal in the
Trident. Killed Rhaegar with a Warhammer. Killed Jon's daddy with a Warhammer. I like that Gendry came back.
And they hinted to that when Jon and Gendry were talking about their dads when they'd each met their dads, and Gendry was like, "Oh yeah, you're shorter," which is, I think, a little like because he's not your dad.
Oh yeah, I didn't catch that. Yeah, because that's Now I feel dumb. But of course, yeah.
I think there was an onslaught of information in this episode that there's so much that we didn't catch.
Right, yeah.
Like, we could probably do this podcast 5 more times and talk about things that we're going to miss.
Right.
A lot of brickwork was laid down here for a path of what's coming.
Yeah.
In these final episodes of this season and next season, which, I mean, God, next season is only 6 episodes.
And they had to give us an obligatory Gendry kills some people with the hammer scene just so we can
see how it works.
Serious, yeah.
Well, how else could David say he can handle himself?
Right.
You know?
And then the other reunification was Jorah, which I like those scenes. I even thought there was a little sexual tension in those scenes. Did I read too much into that? The love triangle, John, Dany, Jorah?
I think it's acceptance for what they are, that they truly see each other. He knows that she knows that he loves him because he confessed it. And she knows that he knows that she knows. And I think it's just acceptance for what they are. I think he accepts that he will always be friend-zoned. And he's at peace with it. He just wants to serve her and be near her. And he will be happy. And she has come to a place where she loves him. She doesn't love him the way he wants, but that she loves him. And so I think there's just acceptance for it. And that's what I saw. And I think that because they're kind of able to let all the pretenses and all the denial go, they're able to just be.
Right. They can finally be expressive. And I don't think they're going to take the route. I mean, whatever happens with them going north, we'll get to later. But I think that the Jorah being the overly protective, like, don't talk to Jon thing they're not going to do that this time around. They've played that story. And I think now, like you said, they can just kind of be who they are.
But they did show Jorah noticing how Dany was looking at Jon.
Yeah.
And so I think there might be a conversation between them at some point. But I remember we did talk about that. I think it was last episode or maybe the one before that we saw Jorah going beyond the wall. And here we go. So it happened here. And I kind of like that. It's kind of full circle he's going back to the north. This is the first time Jorah's been back in the north since he was banished. And you're actually wrong, too, in terms of reunions. Tyrion got reunited with Bronn and Jaime.
Yeah,
but we can come to that later.
3 reunions, yeah. Yeah, Jorah stepped right up and said, let me go north. I'll capture one of those things. And
he doesn't want to be an old man by her side. That's not who he is. He's a protector. He's a warrior. So I like that he's staying true to his character.
Now, let's rate Tyrion's plan on a scale of 1 to 10. I'm going to give it a solid 3.
What plan are you referring to? Of like
go up north and capture a zombie and bring him south?
Well, all right, I'm going to agree with you. It's a pretty piss-poor plan, but of all available plans, it might be the best option they got.
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of logical holes we can poke in it. I don't know if it's worth the time, but Dany doesn't want to go north because Cersei will, quote-unquote, take over in that time. Dany just got there. It doesn't really make a difference. What's Cersei?
She's got momentum.
Is Cersei just going to go take over Dragonstone? Who cares? Dany could remake her kingdom in the north or something. But anyways, whatever.
Yeah.
But even if the plan on its own is dumb, I think the biggest twist of this whole episode and the whole change of everything is that it's possible, maybe not, but it's possible that Tyrion just united or is going to unite all of Westeros. And maybe that's his role. Going into this episode, I was thinking about, is Tyrion going to betray Dany because Dany's too ruthless? Is Cersei going to see that she's losing the war and instead of accepting defeat, blow up all of King's Landing like she did with the Sept, just say screw it and just blow up the whole, Mad King-esque, which this all might still happen. But I feel like everything's been changed a little bit. And maybe Tyrion's role is to actually get everyone together, which is, I don't know what to think about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think Tyrion was destined to have a big role, and I don't think we've seen it yet. I think we've seen a lot of good stuff from him so far, and that's why we know what he's capable of and why we love him so much. But I think truly what he's really going to do hasn't happened yet at all.
I don't know if this episode was totally pivotal in that it shifted things like I just described, where Westeros is actually going to kind of get their crap together and face the North, or if this is just a temporary hold and really there's going to be they're all going to wipe each other out and be completely unprepared when the whites show up,
Yeah, I think the next, what do we have, 2 episodes left?
2 episodes left.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
Do you know if it were any other season, we would only be halfway through?
I know. It's sad.
I wish they could have just had more dialogue. Like, just give us the full 10.
Right.
Nobody would complain, and it wouldn't be like just extra fluff. Everyone would be happy, or almost everyone. But I like Tyrion in that he does a good job of... The show hasn't been as great with characters of having them be shades of gray. It has a lot more black and white characters, where many of these same characters in the books are shades of gray. So, for example, Jon Snow, he's not all good in the books.
Yeah, but he's one of the less ambiguous characters. He's not all good, but we can safely put him in the good column.
Oh, yeah. I mean, he's one of the best by far. All I'm saying is, like, there's nothing wrong with him in the show.
Right, yeah.
And it's so hard not to like him.
Right, he's definitely the hero.
And even Cersei in the books, you're able to really see her as a mom come out more. There's a little bit more humanity to her brief moments where I just feel like she's been pretty...
Well, so speaking of that, maybe Cersei is suddenly willing to accept this armistice and discuss things because she's pregnant. She has...
But you know that baby's not going to make it because the prophecy said you're going to have 3 kids.
She's not thinking about that right now. I'm just wondering if that...
Don't you think she should? Like, don't you think she's smart enough to think of that? She's been really preoccupied with prophecies.
Well, she is, even if it's deceptive, she's taken a more open position right now. And I just wonder if it's because she's pregnant. She's considering a future. But Cersei did give Jaime a little warning, never betray me again, and a little foreshadowing there about...
Yeah, I mean, I remember really thinking about it when she said it, of like, so you would just kill him then? Yeah, I think is the answer. And I think Jaime needs to truly understand that fact, that they aren't equals on a certain level. And I don't mean in society or anything, but to each other. She definitely is pulling rank on him there and doing the same thing that Dany's saying, that submit to me or die.
It's kind of a weird thing. I guess the betrayal was that he didn't turn in Tyrion. Is that...
That's how I took it, that he didn't kill Tyrion on the spot or he didn't turn him in.
And do you think that her asking if he'll punish Bronn was just to let him know that she knew? Or do you think there's something bad going to happen to Bronn because of this small scene?
I feel like Bronn, the show is trying to channel the books at all. Bronn's got something coming from Cersei all along. She's not a fan of him because he's not loyal, and she would know that. Bronn, he's already stating it in this episode, but he's already planning his next move.
Yeah, if he's smart, he will get out of there.
Yeah.
I would have loved to have seen Bronn as part of the merry men that are going north. There's no good reason for him to go, but he just would have been a nice addition to this strange group. Well, before we get to those guys, a couple stops in Winterfell. So I guess it was confirmed, did you take it this way, that Bran doesn't know actually everything. He does need to see through medium. So he was looking through the birds tonight.
Yeah.
We were talking about that last episode.
But I think he can see pretty much through anything.
Right. If he channels into trees or birds or whatever it is, that's how he accesses things. But he does... Yeah,
and he can do multiple at once. So like most... wargs can only be aligned. Like in the books, normally you only have one unless you're really, really good, and then you can have several. But I think he can basically warg into, my guess is almost anything, but I think part of him being the three-eyed raven is that you warg into ravens.
Right. But it does leave a question of how much does he actually know? Like, we're wondering why he hasn't ratted out Littlefinger yet, and somehow he knew that chaos is the ladder thing, but does he know every single thing about Littlefinger, or does he know just what he could view from one of these mediums?
Well, so the thing that I understand about this is he doesn't just see the past, he also can see the future. And he does not see everything, but he sees certain things. And the only thing that I can come up with about Littlefinger is that Littlefinger plays an important role and he can't do it yet. Otherwise, it's completely nonsensical and I'm just annoyed.
Right. Yeah, it's either a big plot hole.
I mean, that's a
huge
gaping plot hole.
Yeah. And Littlefinger outsmarted Arya tonight, which I kind of like, in that we've been wondering, like, is he just an idiot now? And even though it was all a little nonsensical, I like that, one, we see he's not an idiot, and two, we see that Arya is not, invincible. She seems so...
Yeah, I was just a little disappointed. Like, I like that Littlefinger is showing us how good he is, because he is that good. He would never have been alive and gotten as far as he has without being that good. But Arya is supposed to be better. And I don't see her so quickly... Like, this is where they're inconsistent with her character, where some points she's so good, and at other points it's like that's really bad for her to be that misled.
Yeah, I don't know. I kind of liked it. But what I don't like is that it's not just that she's going to be misled, it's that misleading that she's going to follow is going to lead to more conflict between her and Sansa. And all the Starks apparently just can't get along at Winterfell.
Yeah, well, no, that's not the case. It's the Starks can't get along with Sansa. Sansa's the common denominator whenever there's conflict here. And the reason why there's conflict is Sansa wants to be on top. She wants power. It's finally revealed to us what's kind of going on with her. She's the one who has conflict with Jon. She's the one who has conflict with Arya. I don't think there's going to be any conflict at all between Arya and Jon. I don't think there's really much conflict between Bran, although he's not really a Stark anymore. I think it's actually Sansa and what she wants for herself and how not everyone's going to submit to that.
Yeah, it's kind of weird because on the one hand, I think you're right. She said you don't want to be thinking about this, but you are thinking about this. So Sansa does like the power and whatever,
and Littlefinger knows this.
But on the flip side, Arya is talking about beheading all these people and all this stuff. Like whatever her plan is, I'd much rather have Sansa with power if I were the regular person.
Right.
You know,
Arya shouldn't at all. Like she's someone who. No, definitely wouldn't be a ruler, but she doesn't want to be a ruler.
Right.
And she hasn't been groomed in any way ever to be a ruler, where Sansa at least was when they were younger. But Arya was always destined to be more of a knight, and now she's an assassin. But she also knows what true loyalty is, and she knows that Sansa wasn't doing that. I do have a huge criticism, though, of the North. I feel like the North is way more loyal, and I don't think Jon has been gone for that long for them to start being like, oh, boo-hoo, I think we should have chosen you, and blah, 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 blah. Like, that was total, utter bullshit. I don't buy that at all.
That's just there to serve
And the North isn't
Sansa's,
that fickle.
Yeah. No, yeah, that was kind of dumb. And then it goes to that scene, and it's like, dudes, you guys are still bitching about this. He's been gone a week or 3 weeks or 3 months or whatever, but it's like, there must be other topics to talk about.
And I know it was to
push
further
along the story,
point.
Right?
Yeah. But it's doing it in a way that's undermining what a whole region represents. I mean, I am a fan of the North and everything that they've been through here. Like, I think that unity would be a way bigger deal, and I did not like that at all.
Yeah. No, it was silly.
I keep thinking of the parable of like the frog and the snake, where the frog needs to get across the
frog and the scorpion.
The scorpion, yeah. And he needs to get across the water, and it's like Littlefinger is so clearly a scorpion, and Sansa knows it, Arya knows it, and they can kick his ass out. They might lose House Aaron, but I don't think so.
They did say tonight, though, that House Glover is 500 people, and the Knights of the Vale are 2,000. So that might be that is their strongest force, I think. Here,
he's clearly able to talk to the Maester and get things, and he's saying that, like, Lady Sansa thanks you, but how do they know that? They're giving him way too much power, unless Sansa is doing it on purpose.
Yeah.
And okay.
Well, I just took it in a larger context. Like, probably Littlefingers and Sansa are, like, buddy-buddy around the castle, and everyone's just used to it, you know? All right, so let's talk about our little, what's it called? The Fellowship of the Ring. That's like what they call the group in the Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
So we got our own little fellowship, the Fellowship of Fire. So 7 people. It's all the best characters. So Jon, Gendry, who, even though we don't know him well, we know he's a great character. Tormund, Jorah, who I've always liked. The Hound, who's one of my favorites. And then Beric and Thoros of Myr. And then it looked like there was some other people following them. Those are the red shirts in Star Trek who are they're gonna die pretty quick.
Do you think any of those 7 are gonna die?
I've been thinking about it, and I would hate to see any of them go. I gotta assume that Beric and or Thoros would be the first to kick the bucket because they're the most dispensable from the fans or story.
Unless Thoros can do some amazing red god stuff, he is a guy going through withdrawal. That guy is not going to be worth much.
Right.
So.
But they do have some power. But I assume that those would be the 2 to die if anyone dies next episode. And I hope not. I don't want to see any of them die, but it'll just be hard to believe it if they don't. Based on the preview where they're getting chased by all these whites.
We got to have some tense moments.
Right.
There's no way they can go into that and come out without it being kind of...
I mean, is this going to be another Dany shows up with her dragons to save the day? Or how do you think...
Maybe she misses her boyfriend, Jon.
Yeah. Her boyfriend, daddy, sugar daddy, Jorah. But how do you think they're going to get out of that, prediction for next week? The only thing
Well,
I can think
I definitely predict, obviously, John makes it, and the Hound will definitely make it.
Gendry.
Gendry will definitely make it, and I think Jorah will make it.
Yeah.
So is that everybody except for the two you said that
no,
are...
there was one other.
Tormund.
Tormund.
I hope Tormund, but I have a feeling they're going to kill off Tormund. He's one of my favorites of this series. I love him, and mainly because of the actor that plays him. I recently found out that the whole him and Brienne thing was never scripted. It was just how the actors portrayed it, and I was like, what a beautiful thing there.
Yeah.
But anyway, there's going to be some sort of like big thing in a way of like some magic thing happens, like either some red god thing happens or children of the forest or some cold hands thing, but there's gonna be some sort of thing that kind of comes in and saves the day where it's like, oh, okay.
Or maybe they'll just somehow get back to the wall.
I mean, there's no body of water in a ship that John's going out on this time.
Right. The whole way that they all got together and everything seems a little convoluted, but we do know it's going to make for an exciting episode next week.
Yeah.
And like we're just talking about, the Deadpool of all those 7 characters, I hope none of them die. I like all of them.
I love the shot of, like, we'll see it in its true glory, not just a preview, but a Beric with that fire sword.
Yeah.
It just looks cool there.
Yeah.
But anyway, like, so Thoris brings back Dondarrion all the time. So it's like, is he going to be doing some quick magic there and bringing him back? Or is he going to bring other people back? Or
right.
And does Jon know that Beric... Like, I'm curious if those dudes have a chance to talk of like, hey...
Jon and Beric are both back from the dead.
Yeah. Or does Jon die again and does Thoros bring him back? Which I don't think so.
No, Jon's not dying again. One thing I was thinking about, though, if they do, let's just say the plan works. They catch a white and they bring him all the way back to King's Landing and show him to Cersei. Qyburn can make a zombie. He's already made...
I don't think they're the same.
I don't think they're the same either. I don't know, but he's...
It's like saying Dracula, who's undead, is the same thing as Frankenstein.
Well, sure, but there's undead characters in A Song of Ice and Fire, and there's the ones controlled by the White Walkers or by the Night's King, and then there's Jon and Beric, if they're undead or whatever, and then there's the Mountain. The Mountain is the outlier. He's the weird character here. I'm going to guess that Qyburn they won't explore that, but I do think it would be potentially interesting. Qyburn's turning out to be very interesting. And
because I don't think Qyburn uses magic.
No, he doesn't. He does science.
We don't know if for sure the Mountain... I mean, I think he probably did, but if he for sure ever died.
Right.
He might have been on the brink of death and then brought back with weird means. But I don't know if there was ever true death.
Right. And like I said, I don't think they'll go anywhere with that, but I do think Qyburn is a very interesting character that has very unique set of skills in this universe. And him with a white could be interesting. But okay, so there's a lot of big things that happen. I think the biggest being that it is almost beyond a shadow of a doubt that Jon is a Targaryen, and...
I don't think almost beyond. I think it's well beyond.
Right. But if there's anyone, casual viewers, that don't pay close attention, I mean, that's confirmed, and the dragons have some kind of affinity for him. That was probably the biggest, most important thing besides the general story moving forward. And then the other one would be if the kingdoms are uniting in some way or another. I don't see Cersei and Dany making peace to fight the White Walkers, but my whole thought process of what's going to happen next has changed because of this episode. The battle between Dany and Cersei, are they going to appreciate the problem up north? And even if Tyrion is going to betray Dany or not, that was in the forefront of my mind going into this, and now it seems like a distant memory. Even though the very first scene in this episode set it up, it still seems like a non-issue.
Yeah.
So it's... I think they set it up well to open up possibilities, and we'll just have to see where it goes.
I still really like Davos.
Davos had he showed all of his smuggling skills, his lying and bargaining and all that, and they still had to kill the guys, but I thought he looked very lordly.
What was it, fermented crown?
Yeah.
Like that's the Viagra of King's Landing?
I thought him and Tyrion looked so lordly, like they smuggle in their full black cloaks. Davos looked almost like a Jedi to me.
Well, and I mean, come on. Tyrion with his, like, I have noticed that Jaime and Tyrion, if you go back to season 1, they were Blondie McBlondersons.
Yeah, their hair has gotten darker and darker. It's like, we're not going to waste money on hair dye anymore.
Yeah. And maybe that's just the show's way of showing how their allegiance changes.
Right. Yeah.
But, okay, small little dwarf. Let's just say in the show he still has blonde hair because he's a Lannister. He's got his blonde hair, he's got his huge facial scar, and he's a dwarf. And he's just prancing around, walking like, hey guys, I'm going to go on the boat. Like, yeah, that was never going to be a problem. And how did he get all the way there and no one spotted him? Like, it's one thing to get into the castle, but they were by the...
Right, the last two guards on the way out are the two that are like, "Hey, dwarf, what are you doing here? We were looking for one just like you with that scar on your face."
Don't I know you?
But yeah, like we said, they had to do that just so Gendry can kill some people. So I'll mark this as a really good episode. It's...
This season actually is pretty good.
Yeah, particularly the last 3, I think.
Yeah.
So no, this episode, it's almost moving so fast that I'm like, just slow down, just give us those 3 episodes back so I can process it.
Well, and it makes me wonder too about the books, because I just feel there's got to be so much content in those last 2 books that are we just going to get so much extra stuff in there that's going to be just so different or just more?
Yeah, no, this is so incredibly different from the books, I guarantee it.
Yeah.
And that actually, I kind of like that because I look forward to reading the book and feeling like I still get to experience it for the new, even though the show is past
I
it.
agree. And I'm going to have such massive withdrawal after next year when there's no more Game of Thrones.
Oh, I know. It's so sad.
Fun.
No, there's really never been a show like this or going to be a show like this where we can do a 45-minute podcast speculating on what's going to happen and all the different characters. I think this is a bleep on the radar. Like, I was thinking about, I enjoy what we're doing, and I was thinking, like, man, maybe we can do this for another show. I thought of, like, Westworld, and I thought of the new Star Trek, but it's just not.
Well, if any of our
right.
5 listeners say they would want us to do it, I would be down to do it. But I agree with you that there's just nothing that will be on the caliber of this, because we're one of just thousands of people who do this, and we don't do it to really have, like, I joke about listeners, but we don't do it to have listeners. We do it because we just love talking about Game of Thrones.
Yeah, it's fun. We talk and bond and let people listen to it. I do want to do a review when the new Star Trek comes out, at least of the first episode. Probably not the whole season, but just I'm a Trekkie, and so you guys get excited because that's what we're going to do. Okay. Thanks for listening.
Are you thanking me for listening?
I'm thanking everyone.
Yep, thank you, everyone, for listening.
Dun, 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 dun.